other things we got to cover here. Let's see. Did we go over all the links? The roster? Let me just put the roster up there. If you guys wanted to see the CFR roster and go find it, that's where it is. And otherwise, I got to go back over here to some show card. What are we going to have time for? Christopher Wray deep dive. Just did that. JFK. We got to play that clip real quick. Hamas leader. Here's what they did. They put a bomb in a hotel just like they started their country. King David Hotel. Go study it. ADL is a spy agency. Duh. Gaza Holocaust by Corbett. Highly recommend it. Don't have time to play it. And it just summarizes what we played for the last 8-9 months. So I think we're good there. So I'm going to put this JFK clip in production chat. At this point, I just show you guys how I run the show. Here we go. And then I do want to get to this Candace clip. Where's it at? I have to find it because I didn't put a link in there. And this is a GDF clip. It just shows how Israel stole their uranium for their bombs from a place in Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, near Butler, actually. That happened in the 60s, though, so it's not related to the Trump assassination. And I don't have a link for my Y-files. Jeez, what was I doing earlier? All right, so let's go here. Let's play some of this Finders clip with Jamie Dlux. He has tracked the infamous Finders case from the 80s. Now, when we made State of Mind, The Psychology of Control, there was an interview in there with a police chief from Oklahoma, and he had investigated the Finders case, and he talked knowledgeably about it, and we couldn't put all the footage in the film, but I do have the raw footage, and now I'm interested to use Clip Genie on all that footage to find that clip. He gave some detail. There was only a couple articles back then, so it's like, there's this thing that happened that the intelligence agencies were helping with the kidnapping of these children, but there was a lot of details left off. Now there's new FBI documents out, and Jamie Dlux has tracked the people that were knowingly involved to see where they are today using social media. We don't have time to put the whole clip into this week's time capsule, so this is to alert you to it exists. Here's maybe why you want to look into this topic, and leave it to you to go find his YouTube channel, his Rockfin channel, his Odyssey channel, Rumble, etc., and get more educated on these topics. So let's go into a documentary. It's called Finding the Finders by Jamie Dlux. And I first heard of Jamie Dlux because Burmis watched them. So, as we find people, we draw wisdom from the well. Make sure, pass it around, let people know these things exist. And Clip Genie can help you find them and get them out there to other people faster so they don't have to scroll through a 7.5-hour Grand Theft World episode. All right, let's go first to Crossfire in Dealey Plaza. Kevin Costner playing the attorney, Jim Garrison, in a movie by Oliver Stone.
Zapruder film establishes 3 shots in 5.6 seconds. Here. I'm Oswald.
Time me.
Go.
Time?
Between 6-7 seconds.
And that's without really aiming. Key is the second and third shots came almost right on top of each other. It takes a minimum 2.3 seconds to recycle this thing. The other problem is there was a tree there, blocking the first 2 shots by the time they occur in the Zapruder film.
Didn't J. Edgar Hoover say something about that? Leaves are falling off in November?
It was a Texas live oak, Chief. It sheds its leaves the first week of March. So you take this Carcano, world's worst shoulder weapon, and you try to hit a moving target at 88 yards through heavy foliage? No way. Here. The FBI tried 2 sets of tests. Not one of their sharpshooters could match Oswald's performance. Not one. And Oswald was at best a medium shot. The scope was defective on it too. I mean, this is the whole essence of the case to me. The guy couldn't do the shooting. Nobody could. And they sold this lemon to the American public.
This Zapruder film was the proof they didn't count on, Lou. We gotta get our hands on it.
That means we have to subpoena Time Live.
Let me ask you something, Lou. Why not just shoot Kennedy coming up Houston? There's plenty of time. He's out in the open.
I know, I keep asking myself the same thing.
It's a frontal shot.
Even if you miss him for the first shot, if it accelerates, you still got him for the second shot. The only reason for waiting to get him on Elm is you got him in a triangulated crossfire. Right? You put a team there, down at the fence, for a frontal shot, flat, low trajectory. Put a third team down here in this building here on a low floor. Kennedy gets the kill zone there. It's a turkey shoot.
How many men?
Okay. Not one shooter, at one spot on a radio, maybe 3 teams. I'd say these professional riflemen too, Chief. They're serious people. Hunters. Patient. Takes skill to kill with the rifle, Chief. You gotta figure that's why there's been no execution of a chief executive with one in 200 years. 3, 2, 1.
I chain smoke and I say fuck a lot. But I accept myself for the way I am. I accept you too. Viewer discretion advised. FBI releases Finder's files after 3 decades. Declassified investigation linked the Tallahassee child abuse case. Federal agents concluded there was no evidence of criminal activity and dropped the case against the Finders. It would have been swept into the annals of the FBI case history, except for a Stuart, Florida resident named Skip Clements, who had been researching the Finders for years. He claimed the U.S. Customs Service called off the investigation at behest of the CIA, which he said was using the commune as a front to train agents. He even convinced at least 2 members of Congress to look into it, and it sparked a Justice Department investigation. Both congressmen have since died. Another document said a customs agent who asked to review evidence in the case was told it was a CIA internal matter. First off, thanks to Ben's Muircroft and Majestic Angel for helping me look into this stuff. It's a very complex case, as you may know. To save time, and because it's done so well, instead of me reading a backstory, I used a clip from a book called Operation Mind Control by Walter H. Ballard. So check this out.
According to a Customs Service memorandum, the CIA and FCIA, or Foreign Counterintelligence Agency, a distinct and autonomous organization within the FBI, were both involved in a mysterious group with behavior similar to the one in Nebraska. Known as the Finders, CIA ownership of this organization was kept secret for 7 years after local law enforcement uncovered its practice of child abduction, kiddie porn, ritual abuse, and slavery. In early February 1987, an anonymous tip to the Tallahassee, Florida police brought cops out like bloodhounds. The caller said 2 well-dressed men seemed to be supervising 6 disheveled and hungry children in a local park. The 2 men were identified as members of the Finders. They were charged with child abuse in Florida. The customs agents determined that the children may have been en route to Mexico from Washington, D.C. Customs had been contacted because police officers suspected the adults of being involved in child pornography, and they knew the Customs Service had a network of child pornography investigators in their Child Pornography and Protections Unit. When the customs agents came on the scene, police had 2 well-dressed white males, Douglas Edward Ammerman and James Michael Howell. The 6 children were identified with full names, but we shall use only first names since they are definitely innocent. The children were Mary, age 7, Max, age 6, Benjamin, age 4, Honeybee, age 3, BB, age 2, and John Paul, age 2. All were taken into custody. According to the customs memorandum, the children were poorly dressed, bruised, dirty, and behaving like animals in a public park in Tallahassee when they were taken into custody. The subjects were living in a white 1979 Dodge van with Virginia plates. When taken into custody, the adult white males refused to cooperate. One of them produced a business card with a name on one side and a statement on the other. The statement indicated that the bearer knew his constitutional rights to remain silent and that he intended to do so. Upon interviewing the children, the memorandum said, the police officers found that they could not adequately identify themselves or their custodians. Further, they stated they were en route to Mexico to attend a school for smart kids. The children were unaware of the function and purpose of telephones, televisions, and toilets, the memorandum said. The children stated they were not allowed to live indoors and were only given food as a reward. One wonders for what. In the van, the Tallahassee police discovered large quantities of records, computer disks, and a U.S. passport. From some of the records, the police obtained identification of the 2 adults and partial identification of the children. This led to search warrants of 2 Washington, D.C. addresses owned by the Finders Group. An informant gave the police information regarding a cult by that name, operating at various businesses, one of which was a warehouse for the children. The information was specific in describing blood rituals and sexual orgies involving children, and an as-yet unsolved murder in which the Finders may be involved, the memorandum said. With the information provided by the informant, detectives were able to match some of the children in Tallahassee with the names of children alleged to be in the custody of the Finders, the memorandum said. During the execution of the warrant at 3918 and 3920th West Street, the memorandum said, I was able to observe and access the entire building. I saw large quantities of children's clothing and toys. The clothing consisting of diapers and clothes in the toddler to preschool range. No children were found on the premises. There were several subjects on the premises. Only one was deemed to be connected with the Finders. Stuart Miles Silverstone was renting space to other tenants. He was located in a room equipped with several computers, printers, and numerous documents. Cursory examination of the documents revealed detailed instructions for obtaining children for unspecified purposes. The instructions included the impregnation of female members of the community known as Finders, purchasing children, trading, and kidnapping. There were telex messages using MCI account numbers between a computer terminal believed to be located in the same room and others located across the country and in foreign locations. One such telex specifically ordered the purchase of 2 children in Hong Kong to be arranged through a contact in the Chinese embassy there. Another telex expressed an interest in bank secrecy situations. Other documents identified interests in high-tech transfers to the United Kingdom, numerous properties under the control of the Finders, a keen interest in terrorism, explosives, and the evasion of law enforcement. Also found in the computer room was a detailed summary of the events surrounding the arrest and taking into custody of the 2 adults and 6 children in Tallahassee, Florida, on the previous night. There were also a set of instructions which appeared to be broadcast via a computer network, which advised participants to move the children and keep them moving through different jurisdictions and instructions on how to avoid police attention. At the other Washington address, the customs agent writing the memo was again granted unlimited access to the premises. I was able to observe numerous documents which described explicit sexual conduct between the members of the community known as Finders. I also saw a large collection of photographs of unidentified persons. Some of the photographs were nudes, believed to be of members of Finders. There were numerous photos of children, some nude, at least one of which was a photo of a child on display and appearing to accent the child's genitals. I was only able to examine a very small amount of the photos at this time. However, one of the officers presented me with a photo album for my review. The album contained a series of photos of adults and children dressed in white sheets participating in a blood ritual. The ritual centered around the execution of at least 2 goats. The photos portrayed the execution, disembowelment, skinning, and dismemberment of the goats at the hands of the children. This included the removal of the testes of a male goat, the discovery of a female goat's womb and the baby goats inside the womb, and the presentation of a goat's head to one of the children, the memo said. Further inspection of the premises disclosed numerous files relating to activities of the organization in different parts of the world. Locations I observed are as follows: London, Germany, the Bahamas, Japan, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Africa, Costa Rica, and Europe. There was also a file identified as Palestinian. Other files were identified by member name or project name, the projects appearing to be operated for commercial purposes under front names for the Finders. There was one file entitled Pentagon Break-In, and others which referred to members operating in foreign countries. Not observed by me, but related by an officer, were intelligence files on private families not related to the Finders. The process undertaken appears to have been a systematic response to local newspaper advertisements for babysitters, tutors, etc. A member of the Finders would respond and gather as much information as possible about the habits, identity, occupation, etc. of the family. The use to which this information was to be put is still unknown. There was also a large amount of data collected on various child care organizations. The warehouse contained a large library, 2 kitchens, a sauna, hot tub, and a video room. The video room seemed to be set up as an indoctrination center. It also appeared that the organization had the capability to produce its own videos. There were what appeared to be training areas for children and what appeared to be an altar set up in a residential area of the warehouse. Many jars of urine and feces were located in this area. I should also mention that both premises were equipped with satellite dish antennas. U.S. Customs interests, the memo concludes, now lie in the purpose behind the inquiries into bank secrecy laws, and the purpose of the organized procurement and smuggling of children across the U.S. international borders. The possibility still exists that the children are being smuggled for a primary or secondary purpose of producing child pornography. Other agencies with interest may be the Internal Revenue Service, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Defense, and the FBI. The FBI is already involved in the investigation of the transportation of the children already discovered across state lines as it pertains to the Mann Act. In an attached memo dated April 13, 1987, the cryptocracy's secret unraveled. Referring to the previous memo by date and description, subject Finders from Special Agent, this memo reads, I spoke to a third party who was willing to discuss the case with me on a strictly off-the-record basis. I was advised that all the passport data had been turned over to the State Department for their investigation. The State Department in turn advised Metropolitan Police Department that all travel and use of the passports by the holders of the passports was within law and no action would be taken. This included travel to Moscow, North Korea, and North Vietnam from the late 1950s to mid-1970s. The individual further advised me of circumstances which indicated that the investigation into the activity of the Finders had become a CIA internal matter. The police report has been classified secret and was not available for review. I was advised that the FBI had withdrawn from the investigation several weeks prior, and that the FBI Foreign Counterintelligence Division had directed the police not to advise the FBI Washington Field Office of anything that had transpired. No further information will be available, no further action will be taken. An attached chronology points out that the CIA made one contact and admitted to owning the Finders organization as a front for a domestic computer training operation, but that it had gone bad. CIA defers all further contracts to FCIA, Foreign Counterintelligence Agency, is a distinct and autonomous organization within the FBI. The conclusion of the chronology reads, children discovered in Tallahassee were eventually turned over to individuals claiming to be parents or guardians. As far as is known, no details of CIA or FCIA involvement ever became public, was the final line of the Customs report.
The children were eventually released to their mothers. Here's 4 out of 5 of the moms, left to right. From the left, Kristen Noth, mother of Ben, 4. Judith Evans, Honeybee, 3. Paula Arrico, Mary, 7, and John Paul, 2. Carolyn said, Phoebe, 2. And not pictured, Patricia Livingstone, son Max, 6. And here's a couple things that should be mentioned. They started investigating in December of 1986. That's why they took off with the kids. An investigation of the group began last December of 1986 with a complaint of child abuse, sexual abuse, and that it was some kind of satanic cult. But we were never able to prove any of the allegations. They were tipped off they were going to be investigated, and that's why the kids were on the road in the first place. Also worth noting is there was a hole found in the basement of the duplex in D.C. Where have I heard that before? Detective Bradley expressed concern about some info from 3 sources about a hole that was discovered in the basement of the W Street house. Neighbors said a number of persons had visited the 2-story colonial-style home, saying they were looking for the Chinese embassy. They were always Oriental, said Dan Maholland, a medical student who lives 2 doors down from the home. On one occasion, a man who was looking for the Finders said that the address had been advertised in Europe as a youth hostel. Another neighbor, Nancy Wright, said a girl had come to her home and asked directions to the Finders' house. But she said she had seen the address on a notice at a bus station advertising a youth hostel. Police investigator Cheryl Wigand told the Tallahassee Democrat on Saturday night that more than one of the children had been sexually abused. In Virginia, the authorities said they had completed their part of the investigation by searching 5 places in Madison County where members of the group were said to have occupied farms and homes. When they were searching the Virginia farms, they found cages. for children. Some of the materials seized included photos showing children involved in bloodletting ceremonies of animals and one photograph of a child in chains. Oddly enough, the finder's documents contain a couple pages referring to McMartin Preschool. First off, there's a map. The tunnels found at the McMartin Preschool, a preliminary report. 45-foot tunnel. 9-foot wide subterranean entrance found under west wall of the quote dog room, classroom 4, blank classroom. Avocado tree roots cut on both sides of the entrance. Disney bag, copyright 1982, found 4.5 feet below the classroom floor, and 3 to 6 inches in from entrance and under foundation, classroom 4. Tunnel proceeded south, then east 45 feet through classroom 4 and 3, and north, then east 10 feet within classroom 4. Tunnels were 30 inches wide, 44 to 46 inches deep, with the top of the tunnel 30 inches under the classroom floor. What's that, about 2.5 by 3.5 feet or something? 4 large upright containers were found in the tunnel under the arch, obviously hand-placed. A 9-foot wide chamber was found along the tunnel. Tunnel features made it evident that tunnel was hand-dug. 7-foot tunnel extending into the triplex next door. Tunnel extended from the bathrooms off the office in classroom 1 to the front yard of the triplex next door. Front yard concealed from street by 3-car garage. Children described entrance and exiting tunnel in triplex yard exactly where the tunnel and exit were found. A small white plastic plate with 3 pentagrams hand-drawn on top of light green paint was found by the archaeologist in the stratified dirt in the play yard. Per historical archaeologist, pentagrams were hand-drawn by an adult and not part of the manufacturer's design. No doorknobs were on classroom 3, only a deadbolt lock. Each classroom had on and off light switch labeled fire alarm. The system did not connect to fire station but was used as an alert within the school. More than 2,000 artifacts were found under the school floor, including over 100 animal bones.
Up until now, there has been no clear-cut, irrefutable evidence available to the public. But now, finally, the public has smoking gun evidence of pedophile kidnapping, abuse rings operated by a U.S. government intelligence agency. These official U.S. Customs investigation reports are irrefutable evidence of 1. A case of obvious child neglect and abuse involving child pedophile sexual abuse and child pornography and satanic cult ritual abuse, wherein the perpetrators were caught directly in the act by law enforcement, arrested on the basis of irrefutable evidence at the scene, and faced serious charges which typically bring sentences of decades in prison. Number 2, whereas search warrants were obtained for the finder's cult office in Washington, D.C., and a complete search was enacted by law enforcement which provided irrefutable pictures, movies, and documents of such above abuse and neglect, and evidence of access to the confidential arrest reports on the finder's cult from the arrests in Tallahassee, which occurred only a day earlier, suggesting very high-level connections to U.S. intelligence agencies in and of itself. Number 3, whereas all investigation of the finder's cult by the FBI, U.S. Customs, and local law enforcement was ordered stopped by the U.S. Justice Department on grounds of national security, and the matter of the finder's cult was turned over to the Central Intelligence Agency as an internal security matter, since the finders is and has been a domestic and international covert operation of the Central Intelligence Agency. Number 4, whereas any and all investigation of the finder's cult was immediately stopped, all evidence was suppressed and denied, the abused child victims were released back to the adult perpetrators who had been arrested in the act, and the CIA resumed its ongoing covert operation of the finder's cult, which is used to procure and produce the development of child assets to be used to entrap politicians, diplomats, and corporate and law enforcement officials, to sell such child victims to wealthy perverts to raise money for covert operations, to train some of the child victims to be professional operatives and assassins of a totally cold, multiple personality, mind-controlled nature. This most disgusting perversion perpetrated by our government needs to be exposed.
Where is everybody now? I haven't been able to locate them all, but I found some of them. Everything I used is public knowledge and public sourced.
Good. Pause it.
News.
Check out Jamie Dlux in as many locations. That came from YouTube, but he's on Rockfin. He's over on Rumble, I'm sure.
He's on Band.video too.
Band.video
Mm-hmm.
is the place to be.
Oh yeah.
I was trying to do a search for CIA document 1035-960 using the clip Genie. I think I found some references. I did it in another way, typed it in like this, 1035-960. It found a couple like that, right? So there's a couple different ways you could cross-reference when it has numbers involved, for instance, but I was just testing that out and thought that was fun. Also, regarding Oswald, because there was like the JFK clip, right? My question is this: how did Oswald, because like 9/11, I always say, how did the hijackers do the insider trading that goes back to the CIA and my former client, Alex Brown, which was owned by Deutsche Bank, which was run by Buzzy Krongard from the CIA. So how did the hijackers who died in the suicide attacks do that? Right. So in this case, how did Oswald get the Secret Service to change JFK's parade route to put him right in front of the fucking building when that was not the parade route? That proves Secret Service was involved with JFK's assassination, which was successful, and they never got caught. So when they have an unsuccessful one, and they might be in the middle of getting caught here, it's good to ask these questions like, why did Crooks register for the event if he's going to be the assassin? Or did they take someone who registered for the event and crooks him up as an assassin? I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. Maybe next week.
Yeah.
Also,
Also, JFK had a big graph on him that day. He could have been different.
If you listen to the speech, it's eerie because he's talking about there are criminals in his country, and if he would have just said crooks, it was while Crooks was pointing the gun at him, and if instead of criminals he said we've got crooks, it might have freaked the guy out. He might not have taken a shot. Shit, the president just said my name. Fuck, dude, I can't shoot him. Right? It was psyched him out. That would have been interesting. And then they cap him, right? I don't know. But let me ask you this. What if the goal is simply this? The deep state wants Americans to lose faith in authorities of American government.
Yeah,
that's what's happening.
They've been doing that for a long time. I mean,
but it's like on auto dial right now. It's on speed dial. Like they're getting it done fast. Everyone's seeing Secret Service, not accountable. FBI, not accountable, and highly suspect and involved in that Finders case.
And letting Biden wander onto random planes. Like it's just all
Jeffrey Epstein
chipping away. Yeah.
Hunter's laptop not being a big deal at all. There's trafficking and shit going on in the laptop evidence. Anyway.
Yeah.
More to be said. More to be said.
One of the things about the Finders, which is really interesting, like Jamie always does such a great job, but when I first, early on in podcasting back in the Truezilla days, we did some talk. We talked about the Finders cult, and it was so weird because you'd go to Wikipedia and there was no entry for the Finders whatsoever. And I was ranting and raving about it. I'm like, literally everything in the universe has a Wikipedia page. It's like the Finders. No, so I was just looking it up, and you look at the revision history, and it's like the created the page in June of 2021. So it wasn't even
part of the
June
satanic panic. That's how they covered it up, dude. And the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, which was the CIA covering up MK Ultra.
I've done lots of deep dives on False Memory Syndrome Foundation. That's a fascinating one. I went on Tinfoil Hat with Sam Tripoli, and that's what I covered. I did a big deep dive episode on my show, and then took it to them, and I was like, check this out, dude. It's a doozy.
Hey, if I gave Dean the raw footage for State of Mind, 40 hours of raw footage, could I search it and find out what Iserbeat said, or Griffin said, or Alex said, or Colin Ross, or any of the other people interviewed in there? I'm like, I'm in there. And my wife did the narration, but like the gist would be like the evidence from Craig Roberts, who talked about the Finders. But I don't know that it made final cut, but it's in the 6-hour cut that I did when we wrote the film. So we could find it, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
One point about the Jamie Dlux video, he does track those families down. Some of them still have a current operation in Tallahassee, Florida. And he reads the descriptions, and it's kind of creepy that it's still going on, that sort of stuff. And I thought he did a really good job of treating it as objectively as you can, because obviously it's a horrific type of activity that they're undertaking. But the fact that like it's still going on, and that according to Reason Magazine, the FBI used to run a bunch of deep, dark web porn sites and stuff for the CP type of audience. If you go back to the Gate of Pizza that you're not allowed to talk about, right? Which also had underground tunnels that didn't have access from the pizza place itself, but from that building had a basement under it. So probably more to be learned on these topics, I'm guessing.
Definitely. And yeah, and just even looking at the Wikipedia like categories, like see also, it's like false allegations of sex crimes, conspiracy theories in the United States, satanic ritual abuse, hysteria. So it's like they're like, ooh, this cat's getting out of the bag, so they got to create a
Cowboys
Wikipedia
taking midnight
and,
tours of the White House.
oh yeah. Like what was that, Washington Times or something like
That
that?
was
Like
Washington Times,
front page article.
1989, June 1st or something like that. But it's the front page article has the credit card receipts from the cowboys. And I'm talking about H.W. Bush bedroom that was drawn by the children involved. W. Bush had Jeff Gannon, the male prostitute, visiting his White House late at night. So you might see there's an untoward undercurrent of the deep state, and it heavily favors the pedos and the abusers and a whole bunch of dark occultists. And they all seem to be putting Trump in their crosshairs for whatever reason. Maybe it's because he's the heel, or maybe it's because, like, he's the only dude standing up for you guys.
Hey, well, we're standing up for you.
We're
guys
standing
around
up for
here
you too.
so
I
there
stand
you
up
go.
all night.
Yeah.
Look, this is a standing desk. I've stood near the 2,000 hours. I don't know how 200 to 1,400 hours. Will be 200 episodes, 7 hours piece. We stand for you as well. Will you stand for yourself? That's the question. That's the question. Some of you, many of you already are, especially my colleagues that watch the show. It's also, it's flattering when the colleagues watch the show, because these are like my friends. And like in Brett's case, he's like, dude, I listened to 15 hours of Grand Theft World this week. And so I didn't have to ask him, hey, have you heard the podcast lately? He's like, dude, we got to talk about what you've been covering. And when he has friends, he said, at various places he bumps into him, he's like, look, just instead of him explaining it, he's like, just watch the Grand Theft World. You'll see who shot Trump and why and how the deep state's involved, these sort of things. So more to be unfolded this coming week, but we're rocking like it's 4:30, so we got to shut this down. Let's land this plane, LD.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos. They're maybe even doing Q&As. And these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, And this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come on.
Who do we have to thank?